Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with The Terror, Season 1, Episode 5 review. Alright, so I actually really enjoyed this episode. Honestly, I thought this one and probably episode 3 are probably the best episodes so far of the season, and by far I would say too. This one's so action packed. We saw so many things come together here, and of course we're halfway through the season, right? So you kind of expect some things to happen there, and it's been actually going really fast. I mean, technically we've only had 4 weeks of the show now because they did that double episode premiere. 4 weeks ago for episode 1 and 2. So yeah, technically we're only 4 weeks in, but we're 5 episodes in, and we're halfway, right? So yeah, crazy stuff. I really enjoyed this episode. A lot of stuff with this monster now, or the Toonbach, right? I had someone comment that a couple episodes before this one on my review, and I totally get it now, right? So that was, I'm guessing that person saw the whole series, but or at least read the book. I know a lot of people have read the book as well. So and that's something I should look into as well. Look into to that book as well. Maybe when I'm done the series, we'll do that. But anyways, yeah. So this was a really great episode. Of course, getting to the recap here, and then of course later on my rating, favorite characters, some overall thoughts, some more overall thoughts of the episode. So yeah, and I just really want to say thanks for the support on the recent episodes, the recent reviews. It's been really awesome. The views, the comments, likes, everything like that. So really appreciate that, and hopefully we can keep it going with these reviews. I'm really liking this show. It's probably my favorite one of the spring so far. My Let's Talk Television this week, I really focused on this and outlined why, in my opinion, I think this is cable's best new series for the spring schedule. So and I still really believe that, especially after this episode. So anyways, let's get into the recap. So we start off with James telling his man to take the girl back. So they don't want the girl on Erebus anymore, and so they James tells him to take the girl back. So because the crew's getting upset, right, that she's still there aboard the ship, and he doesn't really want those problems. So he says, take her back, right? And he says, I no longer accept to host that girl on my ship. Right, so he's kind of done with it. So the man goes down to see the girl then, to kind of, pick her up and tell her that she's leaving. And he sees Goodsir talking to her and kind of trying to translate a little bit, I guess. So that was kind of interesting to see. Of course, last episode we ended like that, right, with Goodsir talking to her about that and like trying to talk to her, and at that point I'm like, all right, she does not understand a thing he is saying probably, but now he's actually making an effort to sort of like translate, and he's making a dictionary, right? So anyways, the man finds all sorts of like little trinkets around and stuff, so that was interesting. And then Goodsir asks if he can go with the girl back to the Terror, because he's making this dictionary with her language, and he says he's making some progress, right? So he wants to go back with her to keep, communicating with her, keep talking with her, and hopefully get some answers for what's going on. But he says she has not spoken about the monster, which is pretty much what all the other men want to know, right? They don't really care about this dictionary or anything. They just want to know what's going on with the monster. Is she involved? And whatever, right? So then Goodsir goes to pack his things, and then we get that intro. So, and I really like this intro. I think I said that like the very beginning too. But this intro is really awesome. I mean, it's even like just the way it's the music and the the images and all that stuff. It's really kind of horrifying in itself, really. And I kind of find it funny that that Kieran Hins is Kieran Hins who plays Sir John. I mean, he dies in episode 3, but he's actually like one of the main actors, of course, that's credited in the intro. So I find that kind of funny that he's only been in he might be in some flashbacks going forward. I don't know. Sorry, but so far he's only been in 3 episodes, and he kind of gets the same credit as like Jared Harris, who's presumably in the whole series. So yeah, anyways, there's kind of a funny thing there, but so we see Goodsir, he says goodbye to Dr. Stanley, and he says, Dr. Stanley, guys, so they don't really respect him, right, for what he's doing, going back with her to talk to her and stuff, especially because he's not getting answers about the monster, and that's really all they care about. So Dr. Stanley says, just remember to invite us all to the wedding. So it's just kind of a funny little thing there, kind of a shot at Goodsir, though, too, right? But anyways, because he thinks that they're together, they have feelings for each other, but they don't really, right? So, anyways, then we see the amount of men now aboard Erebus, right? And it's all obviously being commanded by Fitzjames now, right? Because Sir John is dead. So Fitzjames, taking over that role, and they have moved a lot of the men there, as the Terror is very depleted now. I think also it's been like I wouldn't say destroyed, but it like parts of it have been kind of damaged, right, from the ice that's rising up into the actual ship. So the Terror is not in a good position right now, not in a in a good not in a good situation, right? I mean Erebus is kind of not as good, they're not in a good situation either, but they're better than the Terror. So that's kind of the idea there, and a lot of the men have decided to come over to the Erebus then, instead of kind of living on the Terror still. So the Terror, in my opinion, this is kind of what I got from it, is kind of where some of the more kind of not bad or evil, but some of the more not as respected, not as liked people are kind of living there. You get Hickey, you get Francis even at this point. So yeah, there's and Blanky too. I mean, I don't think he quite has the respect that some of the ones on Erebus do. So anyways, then on their way there to the Terror, and we get to see this weather. I mean, it's crazy. It's like a huge snowstorm, and of course the temperature's really, really cold. So a man collapses on his way there, and they think his heart has stopped. Is this due to the temperatures? Who knows, right? But he ends up dying. So he basically has a heart attack pretty much, and he dies there in the snow. So another body down, and then we see them putting the body in that room of the dead, right? Because they obviously can't bury them right now because they can't really be outside for, I think the guy said more than a few minutes you can't be outside, right? So they obviously can't bury them, so they are putting them in this dead room, they're calling it. So that was interesting there. So then we see that the man tells Francis that they brought Lady Silence back, even though Mr. Hickey is aboard the ship still, right? So that's an interesting dynamic there, because Hickey's obviously the one who went, against Francis's orders and, basically kidnapped Lady Silence and brought her there. And so now to put her back on the ship with Mr. Hickey on there might be a little dangerous for Lady Silence, right? Maybe he's going to try something. And then Mr. Hickey even talks to Goodsir a little bit about it. So anyways, we get that dynamic, but of course by the end of the episode we know that she leaves the ship, so maybe she's safe now. But anyways, then the man also tells Francis that he couldn't find the whiskey on Erebus for Francis. So this is where we get the first kind of idea. We got it last episode a little bit, but this is kind of reaffirming that Francis is having a huge drinking problem right now. So he definitely severe drinking problem. He's pretty much drunk all the time right now, and then Francis says that he wants to steal from Fitzjames. He wants to take the bottles from Fitzjames's collection. So that he can keep up that he has a stocked cupboard. So anyways, and that of course comes back later in the episode. So then we see Hickey. He asks Billy, who is his like ex-partner or boyfriend, I guess. They were found like under the deck, right, doing things. So anyways, they don't talk to each other really anymore, right? Of course, after Billy kind of broke things off because of his reputation was more important. So anyways, Hickey asks him to tell him what Francis is doing, like what's happening to Francis right now. So he's basically asking him to be his inside man here. And that's very interesting. Hickey is becoming a little bit more prominent as each episode goes here. So what are his plans? What are his intentions with this information that he gets from Billy? Who knows, right? Maybe he just wants to know what's going on with Francis. I have a feeling that it's a little bit more deeper than that he has some plans right now. Because he's obviously not, he's not the best kind of guy, right? I mean, he has a little bit of a kind of not an evil side, but, more of a... kind of a, I don't know, more of a rebellious side sort of thing, right? So yeah, that'll be interesting where that goes. And then we get, then we get this scene. So this was really awesome. This was probably the second best scene of this episode. So Goodsir then talks to Francis, and Francis asked him, thanks him, sorry, for being their proxy between them, right, between Lady Silence and the crew. And Goodsir says they've talked about land, clothing, her tools, but not the monster. They haven't gotten to that yet, and he says that she kind of goes silent, when we talk about that. So then they bring Lady Silence in the room, and she sits down. So they basically have this big discussion, and it was kind of sudden. I didn't see this coming, right? But all of a sudden, she comes in. So Francis talks with her then, and I don't know, of course this was done intentionally, but there's no, captions or anything, right? So we don't know what they're saying. We're just kind of led to believe that they're talking about something. And of course, Francis can speak her language a little bit. I don't think, really, really clear, but he does understand some words, right? So then we hear her say, Toonbach, which is the name of the monster, or at least, the name that they refer to the monster as. So very interesting, right? We kind of get a name for it. And Mr. Blanky then pipes up, he's kind of just there in the background listening. And of course, I guess he knows the language maybe even better than Francis. So that was interesting there. So him and Francis are obviously have this experience in the Arctic, so that's how they know this. But he says that the word Toonbach means a spirit dressed as an animal. So pretty crazy there. And then one of the guys says a spirit, what, kind of creeped out or really surprised. And Francis then says what is said here doesn't leave this room. So this is a serious thing, and he doesn't want people to be knowing that it's a spirit or something, right? Because that would just lead them to kind of freak out even more. So Francis is trying to keep things on the low here, keep things under wraps. But then he kind of talks back and forth to her, and he seems to get angry all of a sudden. Again, we don't know what they're saying to each other, so it's a little bit confusing here. But he just starts to get angry all of a sudden, right, with her. Obviously, she says something to him, and Francis says, I hope you live to sell your dictionary, Mr. Goodsir, and I hope I live to buy it, right? Because he doesn't really understand exactly what she's saying, so he wants this dictionary, and then declines Goodsir to try his way, right, to let him kind of try to talk to her in a kind of a softer manner. Francis is like, no, I'm going to do what I want. So he grabs a hold of Lady Silence here and kind of shakes her when he's talking to her, and he starts asking her about Toonbach, right? He wants these answers, and he wants her to tell him stuff, and he's really shaking her and really getting her kind of frustrated, right, and kind of angry at him too, right, because he's angry at her. So anyways, she does not answer him. She kind of just stays silent, and then she kind of pushes Francis off of her. So then Francis is fed up, and he orders her to be taken off terror. And he says, let her back aboard only if she's screaming for help. So he's done. He's fed up with Lady Silence. He just wants her gone. And of course, we know that Francis is pretty drunk in this moment too. So, he doesn't totally have his wits about him, of course. So then we see Mr. Blanky. He objects, right? He's like, no, I will not, Francis, right? So he said, I'm not going to take her off the ship. I'm not going to, we're not going to do that, right? And then Francis says, help us stop it or you leave, right? He says that to Lady Silence. So obviously, he's pretty desperate for answers here. And then suddenly she starts talking and tells him something, right? She starts telling him something or asking him something. Of course, again, we don't know what she's saying. But then Blanky says, she just asked you, why do you want to die? So, what does that mean, right? Crazy stuff there. So obviously it kind of helps that Blanky's kind of translating a little bit here, but that's very interesting. Why would she ask him that, right? Really interesting. So maybe by doing what he's doing, maybe his actions are going to lead him to be killed by this monster as well. So and then Fitzjames just randomly arrives. I kind of like this. I just kind of thought it was a little bit funny too. He just randomly just walks in all of a sudden. We never really got an announcement that he was going to be there or anything. So anyways, he just kind of walks in, and Francis' reaction was awesome. I mean, he's like, oh good God, get off my ship, right? He does not like Fitzjames. He just wants him gone. So that was awesome. He's like, on top of all this stuff, now Fitzjames arrives. That's sort of his mentality here. And Fitzjames is just wondering what is happening. He's like, what is happening here? Why are you talking to her and stuff? And then Francis says, don't ever call me Francis again. So, I mean, he's really, really pissed off at Fitzjames here. And obviously, maybe his true feelings are now finally coming out now that he's, obviously going through this problem, with his whiskey or whatever, right? So anyway, so he's pissed off, and he's really, and he tells Fitzjames, like, calling him by Francis is not, respectful, right? Because he's above him. So he's kind of reminding Fitzjames of that. And then James accuses him of stealing the bottles of whiskey from him. So he finds this out, of course. And then James just kind of saying it, that he's frustrated with him as a leader of the expedition now. And he says he needs to earn that respect, right? He's not earning that respect right now. He's not being a good leader. And Francis does not take this lightly. We kind of see him like hesitate for a second. And then he just swings at Fitzjames, connects with his face there, punches him right in the face. That was awesome. I mean, this is like really everything so far in the first 4 episodes finally coming to a head here, and Francis finally taking it out on Fitzjames and punching him in the face. So they're split up, the men got to split them up there, and I was saying, I mean, that's what we need to see. Everything's kind of leading up to this moment, and this is an awesome dynamic between the two, right? I've been talking about this for the last 2 episodes, I think, saying, what's going to happen now that Sir John's dead? These two are going to butt heads. What's going to happen? Are they going to work together? Are they just going to be totally against each other, like a civil war type of thing? Who knows, right? So this was kind of the start of that, and I really, really enjoyed that. So then we get the best scene of the episode, I would say. This is crazy stuff. So Francis and Fitzjames kind of continue to argue there, and Blanky decides to go above deck to check the ice conditions. I think Francis orders him up there, sorry. So Blanky goes up to check that, and suddenly chaos ensues as he gets there up on the deck. The tent that they set up kind of like falls down, and the men begin to run out, right? So the monsters attack them again, and he's actually attacked them like on the ship too. In the past we just kind of see the monster kind of attack them when they're on land, but now they're on the ship, and he's still getting to them. So obviously, and we know that Lady Silence is like on the ship now, and he's choosing to attack the ship. So obviously we know that this connection, there's something about it where obviously this monster maybe even came to protect her, maybe even to get her off the ship, to save her possibly. Right, that's definitely a possibility. But anyway, so he attacks the ship pretty much, and I think he kills at least 1 man, maybe 2, that were in that tent, right? He takes them. So then the man sees it at the stern of the ship when he's, still under the deck there in Francis's room, and he alerts the men on the deck. He says, it's at the stern, right? So he's trying to help them out there, and they cannot get down, right? The men on the deck there cannot get down as the hole has been blocked off now. Right, so they can't get up and down there, and it takes a lot to move that piece that's blocking it. So they're basically up there alone right now. Of course, we see later, Hickey's trying to break through and get up to the deck. But for a long time there, they're alone, and they really can't run anywhere. So Blanky tells the men to go off the ship and kind of walk around to find it, right? To hopefully be able to find it rather than just walking around on the deck and this monster kind of being around them, right? They're kind of caged in there, trapped in. So meanwhile, then the monster comes up on the deck and is right behind Blanky, and now he's alone, right? Because he just ordered the men to leave, and now he's alone on the deck, and the monster comes up, and we kind of see a perspective from like his legs on the ship. So that was really cool. We got some really good visuals of the monster in this one for sure, in this scene. So then Blanky runs away. I mean, the action in this was awesome. He runs away, grabs on the ropes, right, on the side of the ship, starts to climb up to the top, right, because he's thinking, I guess, which would be a smart idea if this thing wasn't, insanely, gifted, I guess, monster. I mean, he can pretty much do anything. He can climb just as well as Blanky can. But anyway, so he thinks, get up to the very top, and then he can't get me, right? So he does get up. He gets up to the crow's nest or whatever you want to call it, but he gets up there to the top little deck there, the lookout, and then we see the monster clinging on to the ropes, and he's roaring and all that stuff. We hear that. So what a crazy sight, right? And then that the little lantern falls down, and then we see the monster's head there, and it's massive. I mean, this thing is huge, right? So that was awesome to see that. That's the first time we've really seen the monster in full, right? The only other time was when Hickey looked out into the distance and we saw kind of like the eyes. That was about it. So then he climbs higher. He's like, all right, I got to get higher because this thing is like right here. So Blanky then, continues to climb. And then the monster grabs a hold of the rope, right? Or the toonbach, whatever you want to call it, right? I like call it a monster. But anyways, so the monster grabs a hold of the rope and tears them down. But luckily he grabs onto the deck then, a deck even higher than the last one, a little lookout on there, and gets himself up. So he's there finally. And, and he's kind of safe, for a few seconds there. And then the rest of the crew gets up to the deck finally, right? Because Hickey finally breaks through the door, and they're able to finally get up after a few minutes there, and are ready to fight it off. They kind of come charging, right? With all the guns and everything. I really like that. And they're taking their chance, right? This is their chance to finally defeat this thing. So Blanky then gets his leg sliced by the monster, and that was really gruesome, right? Like, that was really, really, and they showed it, right? They really, went all out, and they showed that. So the monster then, and they're basically on this big mast, right? And they're on the kind of like the cylinder, right, of the big mast there. And so Blanky's kind of just holding on for dear life, right? And the monster's trying to get up also on the cylinder, and obviously slices him. So then Blanky is able then to light a fire from the little lantern piece that he picked up before, and he throws it at the monster, and he sets the monster on fire here, and that is able to show the crew where to aim, right? So finally, and it was actually crazy to see then the crew's perspective of what was happening, and they couldn't see anything. I mean, even the flame, the fire was barely, they were barely able to see that. So with the weather and the big snow and the wind and everything, they weren't even able to see anything. So obviously this fire helps. So then the crew aims, they get the aim right, they fire the cannon, so they fire the cannon right at the fire, right at where they see the flame, and they hit the monster, right? Crazy intense scene here, kind of comes to a grinding halt. I mean, so they hit this monster finally. The monster falls down, but then we also know that Blanky's kind of tied up. His leg is kind of caught in the rope there. So he falls down as well with the monster, but he is still suspended there by the rope that he's caught on, right? So he doesn't fall down to the ground, but the monster does. He falls down and he hits the snow beside the ship. So then, of course, all the crew just, runs out to find this thing. They think that they're going to find it on the ground, but instead they go and they find a trail of blood, but no monster. It has gotten away again. And honestly, I thought for a moment there that they had actually defeated it, and then I'm like, no, wait, it's episode 5, we're probably going to have a little bit more to go. And that's pretty crazy, right? That was a pretty big effort that they put together, fired this cannon, they got a direct hit on this thing, and yet it still is not dead. It's still, moving, and it's still, presumably it's still okay. So, wow, really, really great there. And then we see this little scene. So they find that little trail of blood, and then we see that Francis, back on the ship there, he sees Lady Silence run off. He sees her escape off the side of the ship and run away, but he doesn't do anything. Why, right? Because just in the scene beforehand when they're talking, he seems really angry with her. He wants her gone and all that stuff. So maybe that's why. Maybe he just wanted her gone anyways. Now she's left, so he's got his wish. Or is he actually maybe finally, recognizing that, okay, maybe she has something to do with this. Maybe her leaving the ship is going to be better for us. Maybe this monster isn't going to hunt us anymore. So there's a lot of stuff to tackle with that. But that was a very surprising thing to see Francis kind of look at her. She looks at him for a second there, and then she, runs off, and he doesn't say anything. So, because of course, he could have yelled and, had a couple of the men go after her, but he doesn't. So, very interesting there. So the monster gets away, and Francis lets Lady Silence get away. So they both get away. So then we see the men bring Blanky down below deck. He's still alive for now. It looks like he will survive this, even though that was a really, really crazy thing that he went through. So then Francis goes to retrieve the whiskey for Blanky so that he doesn't feel his leg as much, right? They're trying to get him, intoxicated so he doesn't feel it because they have to cut his leg off. And he's sacrificing his whiskey, right? Like, no way. But anyways, so Francis sacrifices it for his, I would say his right-hand man, right? His next up, pretty much, like his best guy, who's Blanky. So then Blanky says they should celebrate for what they did to it, even though it's not dead. At least they made a stand and they did something, and they gotta have a toast as he lies on the bed there. That was kind of funny, a little bit of comedy in there. And then they cut his leg off. So, and they have to, right? Because it's basically been sliced in half. He can't really, keep that. So yeah, they cut his leg off, and it looks as though Blanky will survive. So that's even something, that's even something positive out of it too, that he even survived it, which is crazy. So then we see Francis sits down with Fitzjames. Sorry, this is basically the end of the episode here. Francis sits down with Fitzjames and the other men. And this was quite a scene. So he says he is going to be unwell for a little while and asks them to draw a curtain around it, right? Keep it a secret, right? He doesn't want anyone to know what he's going through. And he also asked them to care for him as well, since he will not be able to care for himself. So this was a really, really crazy scene here. And then Francis says that he'll be in no position to command, so he gives the role to Fitzjames for now. So Fitzjames is now the the de facto, commander of the expedition, right? So Francis kind of gives him that role, which is surprising, of course, right? That really means that Francis is really troubled, because why else would he give, Fitzjames that role? So then we see Francis, like, he breaks down kind of almost in tears, and he says that, we must not stop, right? We have to keep going, and that, he may even tell them that he wants to stop, but, that he wants them to keep going and all that stuff. Then he gives the rest of his alcohol to be thrown out, and then he also gives his gun up and tells him not to give it back to him until he is on deck again in full uniform. So he doesn't even trust himself with the gun. So that's pretty crazy there. And then he goes back to his room, and the men just kind of look at each other like, what's going on here? And that's kind of the end of the scene. So obviously Francis, wow, going through a lot of stuff right now, and being this commander, of course, mainly due, to his new kind of, addiction to alcohol, I would say, I guess, because I don't think he's been sober with the crew for, days, right? So yeah, so crazy stuff here. What's going to happen to Francis? How long is it going to take him to kind of get back to his self and be able to command? It's going to be, interesting to see, right? How long is that going to take? And, is he going to be the same when he comes back, right? That's another question, too. So, and then just at the end of the episode here was kind of a curious scene. I wasn't really exactly sure what this meant. Maybe, if anyone has, maybe, read the book, or you saw something different here, maybe tell me. But yeah, so Goodsir basically says he wants the monkeys' help with something, and he gives them like a little bowl of food. And then that's pretty much it, and then the episode ends. So I'm not exactly sure what that means, but thought I'd include it just in case it kind of comes back maybe next episode, and we see a little bit more of that. But Goodsir is also becoming very prominent here, and he's having some of these weird scenes, and also being him kind of reaching out to Lady Silence. So I think he's going to play a big part in going forward here, and what actually happens to the crew here, and I have a feeling that he's going to play a bigger part than what we see right now. I think he's going to be, he's going to end up having some sort of spiritual involvement maybe, or something like that. So it'll be very interesting to see what they do with him. But anyways, that just about does it for the recap. All right, so in terms of a rating for this episode, I'm going to give it a 4.8 out of 5. I absolutely really enjoyed this episode. I really didn't feel like they could have done anything more in this episode. Like, honestly, so first of all, we got to see the full monster, or the Toonbok. So we got a name for it now, pretty much. And we have now the idea a little bit of, is it a spirit, or is it just a bear? Kind of a genetically advanced bear, really, right? We don't really know, but we finally got to see it, so that was really awesome. Then you have the dynamic between Francis and Fitzjames finally coming to a head there. What's going to happen between the two of them going forward? We finally get Francis, punch them in the face, right? So those emotions and that anger finally coming to a head there, which was awesome. Some great development with Francis in this one, right? what's going to happen to him going forward? Is he going to be able to resume command eventually? How is he going to get through what he's going through right now, right? So very interesting there. How is Fitzjames now going to handle being the commander of the expedition? This is a role where he wasn't really meant to be, right? I mean, Francis wasn't really meant to be either. I mean, Sir John was the commander. But of course, with his death so early here, Francis and Fitzjames have kind of had to pick up the slack pretty much, right? And also, Hickey is becoming more prominent here, and I feel like, his story is going to develop a little bit more, and they've kind of set the groundwork here in this episode, at least for him on the Terror, because on the Erebus, I don't think he really is that relevant, but for the Terror right now and what's going on that ship, he's very relevant. I think he's going to play a big part going forward in what happens to them. So anyways, yeah, like I said, I really don't know what else you could have put in this episode to make it better. Like, it was really, really good. You had a couple, scenes that were just kind of down. That's kind of why it wasn't a perfect episode. But you can't have, action all the time, right? Like, that's just, pretty crazy. And the action scene we got here with, Blanky being chased down by this monster, and then they actually, hit the monster with a cannon fire. That was a really, really intense and really suspenseful scene. So, so really awesome stuff here in this episode. And, honestly, the only really bad thing was you had a few kind of boring down scenes. Maybe kind of irrelevant. Like, a couple of the scenes were kind of irrelevant where you're like, oh, well, did we really need to see that? Probably not, right? But honestly, the show has been doing pretty good with that. You see a scene one episode and you don't think much of it, but then another episode down the road or 2 episodes down the road, you see it and you're like, oh, that's what that was. So the writers are doing a good job of that, and I have kind of fallen for that before, right? With Goodsir talking to the Lady Silence last episode, I thought it was kind of a throwaway scene at the end of the episode there, but it ended up, of course, playing into this whole episode here and the whole storyline. And so maybe this thing with the monkey at the end of this one may play a big part too. That's why I wanted to mention it. So anyways, really, really great episode this week. Favorite character for this one is going to be Francis, again, right? There's not that many characters in this one that are kind of, spotlighted. So for this favorite character thing, I'm probably going to focus on, characters more than once. But yeah, Jared Harris doing an amazing job. I thought, obviously, he's pretty much playing a different character than he was in episode 1. I mean, Francis has changed a lot now already just in 5 episodes. So for him to be able to, kind of shift this character, and it was really believable in that scene where he's, telling them that he's unwell, that he needs their help and all that stuff. That was a really, really believable scene. So really great acting there by Jared Harris. He's doing a great job. And where are they going to take this Francis character? Is he going to be well again? How long is it going to take? Right? Some really good questions there. And we'll have to see. Right? Really great development with that character. I feel like he's kind of changed the most, I would say, in this, and kind of his true emotions are coming out now, right? With this anger with Fitzjames, and his just overall anger with the whole expedition, right? And how they haven't been able to find the passage, of course, but they haven't been able to defeat this monster, and there's just so many things happening here, and you can really understand why he's unwell or why he's troubled right now, because being the commander of this expedition would have to be very, very stressful, and really just difficult to keep your mind right in this sort of situation. So really understandable there, and some really great acting there by Jared Harris in this episode, and the whole series so far. He's been awesome. So anyways, guys, that'll just about do it for this review. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for tuning in to the review as always, and keep coming back for weekly reviews. I'm going to be doing reviews every week for this show, so yeah, please keep coming back for those. But anyways, again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week for The Terror Season 1 Episode 6.